FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C.
A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Congressman David Young from Iowa's 3rd District, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For starters, can you tell us a little bit about your district and the kinds of agriculture we might find in it?
Well, the district is very diverse. There's 16 counties, and it's basically Polk County, the most populated county in the state, where Des Moines is, and you go west to Pottawatomie County, Council Bluffs, and then down to the Missouri border. So you have the most populated county in the state in this district, and the least populated county in the state in this district. Agriculture is a big play in the district. It's a big play all over Iowa. And so a lot of cattle, corn, and beans, and hogs, biofuels, renewable energies. So it's a heavily agricultural district.
Now, you are the only Iowan in either the House or the Senate to serve on the respective chambers' appropriations committee, so that gives you a pretty unique set of responsibilities and powers within your state's delegation. So with that in mind, what are some things that you can do through the appropriations process that the members of other committees might not be able to do?
Well, first of all, you want to make sure that agriculture doesn't get left behind. And the Appropriations Committee is the committee that Article 1, Section 8, every year you have to do a budget and appropriate funds. And if that committee was full of folks from urban areas or other parts of the country, you wouldn't have the issues important to the heartland at the table. And so you want to make sure that things like funding for transportation, that's very important to make sure that we get our goods to market. APHIS, when the bird flu broke out, wanted to make sure that we had proper funding there for monitoring and have that communication there. And so a lot of different things you can do through that seat on appropriations, not only funding, but withholding funding as well, because there's some policies that come along that you just don't think are good, and you have the power to withhold funds. For instance, Waters of the U.S. We were able to withhold funding there in the committee from the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers.
So let's talk about some of those priorities you were just mentioning. What are some things that you would like to see funding or maybe not get funding throughout the course of the appropriations process? What are really your priorities when you walk into that committee room?
Well, my priorities are just to make sure that there's a good perspective from the heartland and what agriculture is all about. There's a lot of attacks, even within the Appropriations Committee, on renewable fuel standards, some of the more rural transportation needs. And so you just want to make sure that you're dictating, through the appropriations process, a perspective from the rural areas. Our waterways are very important as well. You got to get the barges down the rivers and to port. Trade issues are very important as well. You want to make sure that you're funding the trade offices as well, and then you have down the road perspectives of the possible trade agreements, because we can't just be selling to ourselves. There's some markets out there.
And the subject of policy writers when it comes to appropriations bills are usually kind of, they're usually the story about whether or not a bill passes or doesn't pass. Where do you think is the fine line between attaching a policy writer to an appropriations bill and reopening that legislation, such as the Farm Bill, for example?
Well, there's always been a tradition within the Appropriations Committee to really have a nice bipartisan approach. Where it gets interesting is on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, where there's more people and it's like herding cats. And you also have to keep in perspective that you can have some symbolic defunding or funding of issues out there, but in the end, you have to make the play. Will these all get signed into law? Some things are veto bait from President Obama and past presidents before Republican administrations. And so you want to make sure that you can get a product done in the end, because Article 1, Section 8 says you have to fund the federal government.
Now, you mentioned renewable fuels policy as well as Waters of the U.S. What are some things that you think agriculture in particular should be watching as this appropriations process continues to unfold this year and really into future years as well? What are some things that agriculturally might be susceptible to an appropriations process?
Well, once we get on the floor, you have to watch for those amendments that come along from folks in states that are oil heavy and a lot of oil interests. They want to get rid of the RFS, and we want to make sure that it stays there. I'm not anti-oil. I would hope that people would also, from oil states, would think that maybe we need a diverse energy portfolio. And so I'm for an all of the above strategy. So renewable fuels have a seat at the table, whether it's ethanol, biofuels, wind, solar. It's all part of the component there.
Now let's shift gears away from appropriations and talk about you personally for a little bit. You were a member of Congress that actually has quite a bit of experience in Washington prior to actually taking that oath of service, albeit in a very different capacity. You served as the chief of staff over on the Senate side of the Hill, in particular for Iowa's own Senator Chuck Grassley. So how did that time with Senator Grassley, especially being that you are an Iowa native, how did that time with Senator Grassley change your thinking as a legislator?
Well, it just reinforced the importance of being engaged and being accessible to the people that you represent, your bosses. And so Senator Grassley does this 99 county tour every year. And he's, of course, in counties a lot more than that. I do every county every month. So 16 times 12 is 192. It's so important, that work ethic, and you got to go home. You have to report into the bosses, the people of the 3rd District. That experience also working for Iowa is help me understand the issues, and sometimes the issues come up repeatedly through Congresses, so I have a pretty good hand of what may be coming up. And also just understanding the rules of the House and the Senate are important, because you may know a lot about the policy, but if you don't know the rules, you may be getting left behind.
Now, Senator Grassley, as you mentioned, is known for doing the 99 county meetings, or the full Grassley, as some people like to call it. What do you learn from your constituents when you're doing your own version of the full Grassley, so to speak?
I learned their struggles, their dreams, their aspirations, the effect that federal policy has on them, such as rules and regulations, high taxes, and many times the folks on the ground, your bosses, they have some great solutions. One was we did the REINS Act, as in rein in government rules and regulations. Talking to folks at home in the district, a conversation I had with the farmer said, who's writing these rules and regulations anyway? That prompted me to introduce a bill that said when rules and regulations come out, whoever writes them within the bureaucracy, the administration, Republican or Democrat, they got to put their name on them. And so, we want to see some common sense, transparent, effective, efficient government reforms like that, and that comes from the grassroots.
Now, you had been working on the Hill for quite a few years before you made your run for Congress. Aside from just the privilege that it is to serve as a member of the House of Representatives, what was it that made you want to serve in that different capacity? Because you were already serving the people of Iowa as Senator Grassley's chief of staff. What made you want to take that switch and switch chambers and serve on your own in the House of Representatives?
Well, I love my country, and I love the 3rd District. I was born there, raised there, educated there, both in high school and college. My first jobs were there. And I just have a passion for people in public service. I was encouraged to, prayed about it, and just put my foot in it. And so it's an honor to serve the people of the 3rd District.
If you were given the power, the authority to change any one thing about how Congress works, what would that be?
I would ensure that we do a budget every year by law. We don't have one this year. That's unfortunate. And that I would like to see, if you don't have a budget, that you shouldn't get paid. That would force you to get the job done. Right now, I'm on a no budget, no pay bill. I'm not receiving a federal paycheck from the taxpayers, and I shouldn't, because we don't have a budget done, and that's the law. In Iowa, if you don't get the job done, Iowans think, well, you shouldn't get paid. And so it's just common sense, and that's one way that I can try to make a difference here. And so I'd also like to see, with that budget nexus, a balanced budget. We need to balance our budgets. Iowans have to do it every day. And if you wonder why we don't do budgets, sometimes you get yourself into this mess we're in right now.
Congressman David Young from Iowa's 3rd District, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.